In the past couple years, you have probably seen a video or two talking about the economic crisis in Canada. Housing is unaffordable, immigration is unregulated and unsustainable, and jobs simply don't pay enough. But that's not all. In truth, there's a much bigger, much less apparent problem with Canada. One that has been plaguing the country for many decades already: America. The world might see Canada as the polite country where no one locks their door at night and the only thing people have to worry about is bears and wolves. But I remember coming home from school one day, seeing police lights around my neighborhood just to see on the news that a school shooting had happened nearby. And that's not a one-in-a-million situation anymore. That's starting to happen often, and the reason is this guy right here. In the last 10 years, the rate of homicides by shooting in Canada almost tripled. And guess what? Turns out that 70% of all traced guns and 85% of all handguns used in crimes in Ontario came from the United States. The Canadian government isn't doing much to change any of that. In 2022, Trudeau banned all handgun sales, purchases, and transfers. But what about regulating the border? A police chief in Regina said, "We really think that restricting lawful handgun ownership doesn't meaningfully address the real issue, which is illegal handguns obtained from the United States." But that's not all. Gun violence is just the beginning. Canada also suffers from a massive brain drain to the United States. Some of Hollywood's favorites left Canada as soon as they could. Around 66% of software engineers, 30% of computer engineers, and another 30% of computer scientists from Canada's best universities eventually end up moving to the US, and a whole bunch of massive innovative companies like Zip2, PayPal, SpaceX, and Tesla were founded or co-founded by Canadian citizens like Elon Musk, who's the richest person in the world today. As this guy pointed out in the comment section of a video talking about Europe's brain drain to the US, it sounds like in the EU this is considered a hot topic. In Canada, we're all just kind of resigned to it. When an actor gets famous, when a startup gets founded, when something gets invented, there are already people taking bets on how soon they'll head off to the US, never to be seen again. Speaking of celebrities, how many movies have you watched that were actually filmed in Canada? Have you heard of the movie American Psycho? You know, the one set in New York City during the Wall Street boom? Yeah, that's actually Toronto. You know how Interstellar is set in Colorado? Nope, Alberta. Or how Homelander wears the American flag as his uniform because, you know, The Boys is set in New York City? Nope, also Toronto. Also American Pie, Deadpool, Rambo, Pacific Rim, RoboCop, Shazam, Suicide Squad, X-Men, and the list goes on. All of these movies were filmed in Canada, but every single one of them has a US flag, and not a single Canadian one. Not to mention James Cameron, who made some of the most popular movies of all time like Terminator, Avatar, Aliens, and the Titanic. Again, all of these movies contain huge amounts of American propaganda, even though they were directed by a Canadian. You might think I'm nitpicking here, but is it wrong for me to wonder why Canadians know more about US politics than Canadian politics? Or how everywhere in Canada you'll always see more people wearing a NASA t-shirt than a CSA one, even though Chris Hadfield is one of the most famous astronauts in the world? Or why Canadians dream of moving to LA instead of Toronto or Vancouver? Look, Canada is the only country in the world that suffers from economic, cultural, and societal drain to the United States. After all, America is the most influential and famous country, and they only have one neighbor that speaks the same language and has a very similar culture and lifestyle as them. Canada is a big country with big problems, and every single one of the topics mentioned in this video is so complicated that it could be its own video. This video was not meant to go into details in any of these topics. The purpose of this video is to highlight an occurring problem with my home country that most people inside and outside of it seem to be ignoring. Maybe we should follow our neighbor's example and build our own wall.